And it's noisy. That's okay. But if anyone wants to come in, grab a seat. Now's a great time to do so. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's fourth Space. Thanks for joining us. This is the third event today so far. This part of Space Day, which is a great opportunity to explore Concordia's many divisions and some of the projects that are happening. And our event right now, the launch of the Spacecast. But first, we would like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Chichage, Montreal. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future, and our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other people within the Montreal community. Here at Fourth Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge, co-creating daily activities, examining research questions across the university. We're also running this as a live stream Zoom meeting, so anyone joining us there, if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat. We can read them out here in the space. Just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you. Okay, that's enough for me. It's very much my pleasure now to hand things over to some members from the Division of Space Health. Tell us a little bit more about what's happening. Okay, over to you.
Thank you so much. So thank you everybody for coming. So we're part of the Space Health Division, and my name is Hendrel, and I'm the project manager of that division. And I'm a physics student. I just graduated, and I'm joined today by my two colleagues. So David, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David. I'm going to biophysics, and now I'm going to pass on to my colleague here, Naya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naya, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Spacecast magazine. I study physics at Concordia University with a minor in creative writing, and I'm very happy today to introduce our first edition of Spacecast.
So thank you so much. So like she mentioned, today we're going to talk about the Spacecast magazine. So we wanted to highlight two specific stories that are included in this edition. So Naya is going to tell you a little bit more about this. So we're going to have a discussion, and then afterwards we'll take questions if you have some.
Yes, so I would like to take a second to read three short paragraphs from the letter to the editor. So I wanted to introduce Spacecast this way. Spacecast was originally born during the COVID-19 pandemic. That was a podcast, and it ran from 2020 to 2021. In 2023, this special project was briefly revived as a magazine, but it was not continued on with. And we are super lucky to bring this project back again as a magazine that will continue to run. And Spacecast is kind of special because although it doesn't quite fall under all of the divisions, there is an evident need that it does not have to. As the parent organization of Space Concordia has grown, the need for student writing to represent student activities across all 5 divisions has grown. And what better voice than the one that comes from our own pool of diverse members? So when it was for certain that Spacecast magazine would relaunch, we wanted a theme that would set the tone for its future. And we settled on First in Space. So I'm very happy to discuss with my colleagues 2 articles of interest. And I can begin by asking our colleague here, David, a question. So David wrote an article in our first edition that is called Burning Through the Sky, the first human to have died in space. And the first question that we have for you is, in your article titled Burning Through the Sky, you recount the very important story of Vladimir Komarov, the Soviet cosmonaut who lost his life aboard the Soyuz 1 mission in 1967. As an undergraduate student, part of Space Health, what compelled you to pick this historical event as the topic of your article? And what kind of angle did you decide to take?
All right, so why did I choose to do study about Vladimir Mikhailovich Komarov? It's mostly because of how we can learn from history about engineering negligence, or even for political pushes, as it was the case for Vladimir. He was the astronaut leading Soyuz, where by political ideology and because it was of the 50th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, they wanted this project, this plan, the Soyuz, to be successful, even though there were over 200 failures in its engineering. So it'll leave us a lot of things to think about when we talk about the lives of astronauts when we send people in space.
Can you tell us more about Komarov's life prior to the tragedy and what ultimately led to his death?
So Vladimir was young. Well, he was coming from a humble family. His dad went to the Second World War. He was killed, and he then joined the Air Force. He became a pilot, and afterwards he continued his education as an engineer, where he successfully went to space. And then he was scheduled to go on Soyuz as being the the first person to go twice to space. Right, so that leaves a lot of think about his capacities. He was the best fit for these kind of space programs, and he had a lot of people supporting. He was very loved around the Soviet Union in general.
Yes. So thank you. Our final question, not final, the third one. Soyuz 1 felt a lot of pressure under its government administration at the time to beat their American counterparts in the space race. Despite the competition and technical failures, could the mission be considered a success in certain ways?
So, of course, the pushing of political interests is pushed to be this successful mission to be part of the newspaper by the time they arrived to the 50th anniversary and for all the holidays that they were experiencing. So they didn't want to delay any of these programs because of a lot of problems of interest. And there was also a change in the administration for the head administrator for this project who died. Then it was passed on and it was pushed to be forward. We can learn about how the pushing of specifically these kind of projects where we are putting people's life in, we need really to reevaluate all possibilities and to counterpart all of possible outcomes. As in this case, we had over 200 of problems. There were letters wrote to Berezhnik, which he didn't reply, he ignored them. And with that, we can learn how we can actually listen to the engineers who are telling you that the program might fail. So yeah, we can learn a lot about that. And as a matter of fact, Soyuz, after the Soyuz first, they redesigned and his system is still used until nowadays. It's been over 140 missions successfully that has been successfully returned back to Earth that uses still the same Soyuz system. Not the first one as the Soyuz 1, but the Soyuz 3rd.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was really fascinating reading your article. It was very well written, and I do encourage everybody to also read it. We have some copies of the magazine if you're interested. So just like to kind of, as an overview of your article, I was wondering if you had any particular takeaways from maybe the lessons learned through this story or anything in particular that that you learned from while doing your research.
So mostly what I've learned from it is how especially the political ideologies can push for better breakthroughs in science and technology, but as well can push through some certain boundaries that shouldn't be pushed, as in this case, safety. Because as we know in these special cases of astronauts, safety comes first. If the astronaut successfully goes to space but cannot go back home, then we couldn't say that it was a successful mission, right? So we can learn a lot of what happened in history, so we don't stumble upon the same rock once and over again. And so, and as I said, Soyuz is still the system that is still being used. So we will learn a lot about those errors, those mistakes, so we cannot stumble upon the same rock. Even though failure is still, we cannot avoid failure, but we can avoid negligence.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it kind of brings back to another article that we had in the edition, which Naya, you wrote. So the interview that we did with Dr. Roberta Bondar, the first Canadian woman and the first neurologist in the world to go to space, as it pertains to how modern space missions are conducted. So we're going to go into a little bit more in depth about that specifically. But before we get started, I wanted to know, and maybe some people in the audience might wonder, how'd you get in touch with an astronaut? How that came about? What's the story there?
Yes. So when we decided on the theme for the first edition of Spacecast magazine, which is First in Space, I was particularly interested in highlighting first in Canadian space history. And in my research, I learned a lot about Dr. Roberta Bondar, who is originally from Ontario, who was the first woman and first Canadian woman and first neurologist to have gone to space. In my research, I was able to come across her contact, and I figured it never hurts to reach out. The worst anyone can ever say is no, and we didn't get a no. So we are very grateful to have had a conversation with her that you can read about this edition.
Awesome. So yeah, so in terms of the conversation that we had with Dr. Bondar, because I was also fortunate enough to have been present during that interview. So if we look at the insights on modern day space missions, like I was talking about earlier, can you maybe provide a little bit of context or elaborate on Roberta Bondar's answer when we asked about how missions, if they're predetermined in terms of the research, if we pick the astronauts before or after determining the experiment that is conducted?
Yes, and that is a great question. Dr. Bondar told us a lot about the leading up to space missions and how they are planned. As for how exactly they go about doing that, the research that is done aboard International Space Neutral Zones are predetermined in the sense that a lot of international cooperation between different space agencies across the world has to be done with respect to what each individual agency would like to see in terms of research and how much of that research they can prioritize in a limited amount of time spent in space. It is important to remember that going to space itself is very cost effective. There are a lot of time and resources spent. And when you are cooperating with international partners, it is super important that everyone gets a chance to research what they want in the amount of time.
Yeah, and of course, there were a lot of other different topics that we went in depth about, and they were all super interested. So maybe as it pertains to that or any other topic, did you have something that really struck you or that you thought was particularly interesting or that you maybe want to talk about right now?
Yes. So Dr. Roberta Bondar is highly educated. And in general, we felt very lucky to have heard about how her education and her career trajectory played out. As young students ourselves at Concordia University, it is super important that we get to hear the advice and the experiences of people like Dr. Roberta Bondar, who belong to fields such as the space research, space exploration field that a lot of people at Concordia University and Space Concordia are interested in. What I liked the most was that she was very personable, very friendly, and she genuinely enjoyed telling us about how her education as a young adult was like.
Yes, and also like as we look into the title of this article as well, which is First Steps Towards a Career in Space, it really fits what you just mentioned. And I was wondering if there were any takeaways that you took, from her advice on regarding to your next steps, maybe towards a career in space or something that students could benefit from.
Yes. So she spoke very, very passionately about finding people to look up to and finding mentors, as it helped her a lot in her undergraduate degree and onwards. And as someone who is in the undergraduate stage of her education, it is very, very true that finding mentors and someone to look up to who you might potentially want to work with, or even like follow similarly in terms of career or interest in education, helps along the way in terms of understanding what it is exactly that you would like to get out of your undergraduate education.
Perfect. So so both of these articles that we talked about, so Burning Through the Sky and also First Steps Towards a Career in Space, are part of the Spacecast edition, which is available. They were both super interesting. Before we wrap things up, I just wanted to ask you, David, if there was one topic or maybe two in particular that you wanted to explore potentially for future editions.
Well, right now I'm working on a paper. It's based on new bacteria discovered in the Chinese space station. It was just discovered a couple months ago. It's a very interesting species because it adapted to space. In a way, we can say that it's a bacteria that evolved to survive in space, meaning that it has the protection for the radiation and also the managing of the energy for the harsh environment. This bacteria, we don't know much about it yet. We're still doing research, but as much as we know, we're working on an article about that. It's very interesting. The name of the bacteria is Naya Singh.
Awesome, interesting. And finally for you, Naya, what are the future plans for Spacecast? So we did hear about potential articles that could be included in future editions, which sound very interesting. So how can people keep up with Concordia News, Space Concordia News, advancements in the fields, and maybe potentially recruitment? How can people join your team?
As I mentioned in my portion of the letter from the editor, Spacecast is a place for us to highlight Space Concordia projects and upcoming events. So it will always be a resource to keep up with Space Concordia in general, but also space news and other discoveries that happen outside of Space Concordia in the professional world. As I also mentioned before, Spacecast was a podcast at one point in time. We would be very interested in potentially also expanding to include a podcast once again, but with more of a focus on bringing in speakers like Dr. Bandar to talk about like their career experiences, their education again. And in general, it would just be really fun to have sit-down conversations with professionals in the field.
Well, thank you so much. So that's it for us. We're happy to take questions if you have some, but we'll stay around for anything relating to Spacecast. But thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, or you could also chat a little bit afterwards? Oh, we've got a question here. Hold on.
Thanks for the presentation. A question for David. What was the design error that caused the death of the astronaut on Soyuz, you know?
What was the cause of death?
What was the design error that caused the death of the astronaut on the Soyuz mission?
So it wasn't one specific design error that caused the malfunction of the device, the vehicle. It was multiple errors that all affected. So what happened was he was sent to space. As soon as he went to orbit, the first problem started to go through. The solar panel didn't expand, and it was blocked in the view. The telemetry system failed. He went through automatic to manual, which let him everything by eyeball. He just look outside in the window and see where he was, and based on that, he will make the trajectory and everything. He was very professional when he was with command. He dealt with that really well until the 17th orbit, when it was scheduled for his return for his emergency landing. So when it arrived, he went in through orbit back to Earth. The problem was when he tried to deploy the parachutes, the drop parachute didn't go through, didn't come out. Because of the speed, the emergency parachute went off, but it got tangled, and another parachute came off, and it got tangled with the drogue and the emergency parachute. So it was just basically a meteorite going back with Vladimir. Then he landed in Kazakhstan, and it just exploded out of the fuel, the remaining fuel, and the spacecraft. It was all incinerated, and the possible cause of that, it was the landing. It was too harsh, but it's believed that he didn't die because of any other condition, but just on the landing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we can wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming in. It was great. It's great to hear about that. Like, actually, would love to get our cameras a little closer and see the book itself. But we're gonna close up the Zoom and the live stream now, anyhow. And this remains available on our YouTube channel. But you should also stick around a little bit at 3:00. First steps towards human resilience in deep space. We have Michael Stolberg, Dr. Santiago Constantino here in our space to